Welcome back to Open Line. We are talking about A Season to Remember. This is a program that's coming up that honors the families of victims of violent crime. It happens every year. The governor attends. We are happy to have with us Tina Fox, Director of Victim Services for the Tennessee Board of Parole, and also Delores and Phillip Robinson, who are sharing their remarkable story. So Delores, again, your husband was murdered, Phillip, your dad, back in 1986. You all have now forgiven the two people who did this. And I want to ask you, Delores, so you just recently went and asked the parole board, said, we forgive these individuals, which is unusual. What did people think when you said, we're going to go and ask that they get out?
Well, they didn't. They would just look at me like they thought, hey, she's lost her mind. Because I would be talking, they'd say, whatever happened to him? And I'd say, well, you know, one of them is already out, but next week we go to another one's hearing. And that, and she said, well, I hope they, you know, lock him up, keep him there forever. And I said, oh no, I don't feel that way. My son and I are going to go and speak at the parole hearing for him to be let, you know, go. And she looked at me, and there's been several people that have asked me this. And over the years, and when I'd say, you know, that we were for them getting out, they just don't say much of anything. They just stare. They really just stare at me and say, like, I don't believe you. But anyway, as I said a while ago, though, it's really a relief to forgive these people and let them, after 30-something years now, they are back home and they are living normal lives. I guess how you can live a normal life after you've been in prison for all these years. But anyway, it's a big relief for me. It really is.
And it didn't come overnight.
Oh my goodness, no.
So they spent a long time in prison, but it took a while for you to get to this point.
Yes, very definitely.
How long do you think? When?
Well, I've been a Christian since age 12. Knew about the forgiveness verses, but Thomas Jefferson is famous for having cut out parts of the Bible that he didn't like. I didn't go to that much trouble, get out a penknife and do that, but I was ignoring those scriptures, wrestled with them, and then just kind of set them aside because I didn't have enough to do that. I didn't trust God enough, to be quite honest. So I distinctly remember it was May of 1994. I was mowing the yard and picking up some sticks that had fallen from an old tree, and just finally got so tired of carrying the weight of these two men on my back, and sat down on a mower and released them. Told God, I said, I don't like this, but I'm going to trust you with it. I hope these men, if they aren't Christ followers, become Christ followers. And God, I don't understand all this, but if you have us worshiping you side by side in heaven forever, I'm going to trust you with that. And so that really just sat right there, because I'm not cut out of material to write a letter to a murderer and say, I've forgiven you, when they've denied it. And they're still in the appeal process at this point in time. Right. So it wasn't until Ron wrote a letter in 2007 that we started to correspond with one another.
How much, what is your biggest takeaway from that correspondence? What are some of the things that stand out the most? Obviously, he admitted to it, as you said, but even deeper than that, what are some of the things that kind of stand out to you?
Well, he acknowledged that he was under the influence of crystal meth, would do anything to get it, and it really had taken over his life. He'd been addicted for almost 2 years. And that was the purpose for the robbery, was to get money to buy a bag of meth. And in 1996, he became a Christ follower, but he still had trouble with accepting forgiveness and forgiving himself. And he says he heard this still small voice. He says, you need to confess to the Robinson family. And so that's what he did in 2007. And really, I guess he became more human at that point. We'd granted him his humanity when we'd forgiven him, but still, he became more three-dimensional for us. And he really went from being Hammer to Ron Hammer. He got a first name out of that.
And how do you reconcile this with I guess, your dad, your husband, how do you think he would feel that you all went, again, all these years later and said, okay, release these people? What about that?
Well, my understanding of the Bible is, as a Christ follower, he's in heaven and in Christ. And so however Christ feels about it, that's how my dad feels about it. So I believe that he's also for that.
I definitely agree that Wayne would be for us doing what we have done and speaking on their behalf at the parole hearings. Or I couldn't have done it if I didn't really believe in my heart that Wayne would have wanted these men forgiven. It's amazing how your thoughts run at that time. Well, even some members of my own family asked me how I was, how was I going to deal with this if they did, get released. And are you sure that you're doing the right thing? And I had to explain to them once again. It's just amazing how much better. Actually, now, as I said, it took years before I could even think about forgiving them, because to go through the trial, and it was a long trial, and then to hear him look directly at me and say, I'm sorry, but I did not kill your husband. And those words kept ringing in my ears, even when the parole hearings all came up, and he told his story to the parole board of how this all came down. This is where Miss Fox was so terrific to me, because he told exactly how it happened. It's the first time I had actually heard out of his mouth what happened that night on the sidewalk, and I felt like I'd been kicked in the stomach. And she put her arms around me, and she was so comforting. I can't say enough nice things about her. She's been terrific through all the parole hearings and all of this. But anyway, I feel like we've all come a long way.
Yeah, I bet. And so Tina, you go to lots of parole hearings. You help lots of people. How unusual is this?
It is highly unusual. We hear, the Board of Parole hears about 1,500 cases a month, and every case has a victim. And we are inundated with victims and victim family members attending parole hearings in opposition of the offender's early release. And so when Mrs. Robinson called and advised that she wanted to be in support of the offender's release, it took me back. And in victim services, we have this mantra that we don't judge. It is what it is. And so parole hearings are open to the public. She is a registered victim with us, and so she was afforded an opportunity to come and voice her concerns. And so there are a raft of legal factors that the parole board members must review and consider. And the victim's voice is a legal voice, a legal factor. It is not the determining factor, but it is a factor that must be reviewed and considered. And obviously, it was reviewed and considered.
So in other words, if a victim's family comes forward and says, I wish that so-and-so be released, that's not, the parole board doesn't have to release them, and it doesn't mean necessarily that the person would be released, but they consider that. That's an important consideration.
Yes, sir. It is a legal factor that they must review and consider. Again, it's not the determining factor. There are legal factors such as education, disciplinary infractions, the length of sentence, how long they have served. The list goes on and on and on. And support of the offenders, opposition of the offender, goes on and on and on. There is not necessarily one identifying factor that could determine release or not, but there are factors that must be reviewed and considered.
All right, we're going to take a break. Then we're going to get some phone calls. I think Ann has been holding for a while. Hold on there. If you want to call in, 615-737-PLUS, 615-737-7587. Take a break. Be back right after this.
For more than 15 years, Tim Takas has been answering your questions on Morning Line and Open Line. Now Tim and law partner Barbara Boone McGinnis have their own hour devoted entirely to elder care law. These are issues every family will face. Start finding answers. Watch the Takas McGinnis Elder Care Law Hour. Friday mornings at 9 on NewsChannel 5+.
Medicare open enrollment ends December 7th, so it's time to talk to CIGNA-HEALTHSPRING, where our one priority is you. We want to help you choose a Medicare Advantage plan now that fits your needs. CIGNA-HEALTHSPRING Plus You means our plans are designed around you with an approach to healthcare led by your doctor. Call CIGNA-HEALTHSPRING now to learn about your options and get a free guide. There's no obligation. CIGNA-HEALTHSPRING puts you first with plans that offer no monthly premiums, no primary doctor copays, prescription drug coverage, even dental and vision services. With a Medicare Advantage plan from CIGNA-HEALTHSPRING, you'll enjoy one more advantage: a focus on preventive care designed to help you stay healthy. Open enrollment ends December 7th. Don't wait. Choose a partner that puts you first. CIGNA-HEALTHSPRING. Call 1-855-738-0416. That's 1-855-738-0416. CIGNA-HEALTHSPRING. Together, all the way.
Holiday tipping guidelines.
What should you tip?
Next Inside Edition. They're the people you rely on all year long.
Have a wonderful holiday.
So what should you give them this holiday season?
What's appropriate for a hairdresser?
Thank you so much.
Is it proper to give your mail carrier a tip?
Leave it right in the mailbox.
Then, Meghan Markle's father, where we found him living.
His very private life in a remote village.
Next Inside Edition.
Tomorrow at 4:30 on NewsChannel 5.
Talking about A Season to Remember. This is the program that helps, or I guess brings together victims of violent crime, and they put up a ornament on a Christmas tree. Again, happy to have everyone here. I guess, Philip, you're on right now, so I'll ask you a question. So your dad, again, was murdered back in 1986. You have forgiven the person that did it. When you went to the parole board and said forgive, asked the parole board to forgive, what was the reaction from the parole board?
Well, Mr. Gobble was the one that heard Ron Hammer's case, and he commented at the end of that it was one that he would not soon forget. I shared from Ecclesiastes that day. Especially, there's a time, a season for everything. There's a time to kill, time to heal, time to tear down, time to build up. And so the time for Ron Hammer to go home and be with his mom and his family, we just felt it was right.
You've kept up with him since.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
How has that relationship gone?
Well, we consider ourselves friends, and we're actually co-authoring a book about forgiveness.
And what's the name?
Forgiveness in the First Degree.
I think that's a great name.
Yeah, our agent picked that out for us.
It is. It's a great name. And I guess the essence of the book is what? The power of forgiveness?
Well, it starts with his story. We're juxtaposing our stories. He tells a little bit of his story from November the 14th of 1986, and I tell my story from that day. And then his fear of being caught, his fear of incarceration, 3 suicide attempts while he's waiting for trial, how he fashioned his defense, convinced people to tell the truth, his truth, then his prison experience, and then the struggle that he had with just my dad haunting him day and night. He says, if you kill someone, you carry that person with you the rest of your life. And so that letter was critical, and then we started corresponding back and forth. And whenever I told our story, I noticed people would stop and listen, and so I proposed, probably back in 2012, maybe we should write this down. And so he started contributing from prison, writing his story, and I was working it on my end, and we're just a few weeks away actually from having a printed copy.
That's great. And the Season to Remember, which is what brought us all here, you'll be attending tomorrow.
It's Thursday.
Or Thursday, sorry. It's Thursday.
Yeah, we'll be there tomorrow.
So you'll be there. Hopefully you'll go Thursday. This is the first time you've gone, is that right?
Right, yeah.
And why are you going?
Well, there's something about being with people who have suffered a similar loss that we all kind of have the same groan. And like Tina said, there's that sense of nobody really understands what I'm going through, but when you're in a room full of people that have experienced the tragic ripping of someone out of their life by violence, we all kind of speak the same language. So I'm looking forward to just being in a room with folks who know my pain to some degree. It's all different. Every loss is unique because every relationship is unique, but generally we kind of know what this is like, and no one else really.
In a way that no one else
Yeah, that
does,
was my problem in early grief. I said, no one understands me. No one understands how I feel.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And what are you hoping to get when you go Thursday?
Same thing as what Phillip said. It's amazing to be with people that have, that you can, you can get together with people like this that have lost loved ones, and especially if theirs hasn't been as long as what ours has. And that you can comfort them, that the pain, which is horrible at the time, it can get better, because at the time, actually, as I said, I'd been married for 35 years to this man. We were 20 when we got married, and I really had to change my whole life, just in a gunshot. All, as Phillip just said a few minutes ago, this man was hung up on meth, and that has. When he told how he would do anything, such as murder, to get the money to buy this. And it really is hard to understand how somebody can let their life go for something like this. I mean, to want something like that so badly. And and I'm sure there's not any cases that are the same. I imagine we all feel differently at the time. But it's terrible, I can say that. And so for these people that are just now in the grieving process, it will get better, but it's not overnight.
Right. Let's go to Ann. Hello, Ann.
Yes.
Thank you for waiting so patiently. What's on your mind?
Very early in this tree process, I had a very dear friend that was murdered, and I know the importance of what Thursday will bring. I have 3 people that will be there Thursday. Unfortunately, I have a nephew that was murdered out of state 2 months ago. And no matter what I do, and no matter what anyone does, no one can comfort my sister, because we've not stood in her shoes. And as Thursday has approached, I've wanted to know how I could put her there Thursday. Is there a way that next year she could be there to hang an ornament for her son, who was a victim to a violent crime and who was murdered? It just happened to be in Ohio and not here in Tennessee.
All right, Ann, thank you for that. Thank you. So that's a question maybe other people have as well, but what do you say there?
Yeah, so parole hearings are open to the public, and so are our events. The murder could have happened in another state, another city, but we certainly welcome anyone to come to hang an ornament on behalf of their loved one, no matter where the murder took place.
How do you, is there an invitation that goes out, individually? Or is it word of mouth? I mean, how do the people, you said hundreds attend, how are they invited?
Right, we have a mailing list based on victims' family members who attend our parole hearings. This year we sent out over 1,500 invitations that went out internally in Tennessee as well as externally, because people move out of state. They want to get away from the murder. And those things that remind them of that. And so we send out invitations. We have a mailing list. And so anyone who would like to get on that mailing list, they are more than welcome to call us so that we can add them to our mailing list.
This was started 15 years ago, as you said, when Phil Bredesen was the governor. Mm-hmm. Do you know of other states that do this?
I do not. What I do know, because I serve on an international committee, is that Tennessee is a model for so many states when it comes to victim services.
And what sort of, how many have you been to?
I've been to at least 10 of them.
At least 10 of them?
At least 10.
What sort of, what is imprinted in your mind from going to so many? What is there one story, or is it a kind of a conglomeration of stories? Kind of what is the thing that moves you most about this, or you remember most?
The thing that moves me the most is it's an event where we remember victims' names. Every day we remember the offenders' names, the infamous offenders who commit these offenses. And we hardly ever remember the victims and their stories and their names, where this event remembers the victims who were taken away so tragically. That stands out to me.
I think that's great, and that's powerful. And what when you all hear that, you haven't been, but you're going to be going on Thursday, what do you think?
Well, one of the primary reasons I'm going is because of how impressed I am with Tina Fox. She is not a state employee. She is, but she's not your typical state employee, because she does what she does with love and compassion. I told her just recently, I never will forget when we were at that first hearing and my mom was getting the wind knocked out of her by hearing the story of how my dad died from the person who did it. And she picked up on it, and she put her arm around her, and she put her hand right here. And I was thinking, I'm a bad son because I've missed this. But she picked up on it and she covered for me. So that's what impresses me. I think what the state of Tennessee is doing, model program, but we also have model people that are doing it, and that's what sets it apart from if anybody else is doing it. In my opinion, nobody else has Tina Fox.
Thank you.
That is great.
Yeah.
And you see some remarkable stuff. I mean, this story here is amazing.
Sure.
And you're going to hearing after hearing and hearing story after story. That's you hear some remarkable stuff. Is it hard? Is it rewarding? How would you characterize it?
It's both. It's emotionally challenging, and it's a challenge for me not to get emotionally involved with the family members. I do remember a parole hearing where I sat there and cried with the victim who lost her husband, and I remember saying to her after the parole hearing, "I am so sorry for crying," and she simply said to me, "I'm glad that you did cry, because it told me that you are human and that you were sensitive to my needs." And so there are victims' rights, as you know, and the first basic right is for us to be sensitive and treat each victim with dignity and respect. And that's what it's all about, and not anyone can do the work that we do every day. But it's important that we have that compassionate side, because we have people like Mr. and Mrs. Robinson who will come to a parole hearing. And parole hearings are not events where people know a lot about. It's not like it's a criminal proceeding. Parole hearings are extinct, so to speak. And so when you're not familiar with something, you need support, you need encouragement, you need guidance, you need leadership. And so that's what we offer at the Parole Board, so that victims can come in and be both comfortable and confident in what they're getting.
Don't these take place in the prison often?
They do.
I mean, imagine that. You're walking into a prison, how uncomfortable that would make you.
Right.
There's just a lot of stuff that would be very uncomfortable.
Right. So the offenders have to attend, obviously, the hearing at the prison. But we offer video conferencing. The Robinsons were afforded an opportunity to come to our office and attend the hearing via video conferencing. That allows victims and their family members not to go inside a prison where sometimes it is uncomfortable. We do have victims who want to attend the parole hearing at the institution, but for the main part, we have victims' family members who say, "Hey, I want to attend via video conferencing. I do not want to go inside that prison."
And you all did video conference?
Yes, sir.
Okay, interesting. How many? Well, go ahead.
Due to the fact that it was 300 miles to where they were in prison. And I was just glad when Miss Fox told me that we didn't have to go there, that we could come to Nashville, and it would be with all the modern ways of doing things. And but it's terrific that if we'd have had to have gone these 4 times to that to the prison. That long trip would be rough.
How many, were there any parole hearings prior to this? I mean, did they come up like every few years, and how many parole hearings were there before you all asked that they be released?
Well, Ron Hammer's first parole hearing was in, I think, September of 2014. And the final determination was they would do a psych exam and then hear him again in March of 2015. Steve Kiger, his charge partner, his was in October of 2014, and he was denied parole. I think a lot of that had to do with probably his prison record. He had not been quite the model prisoner that Ron Hammer had been. Plus, Ron was a veteran of the Marine Corps. I think that served him well too.
Right.
So then, when Ron came back in March of 2015, he was paroled. The decision was to parole him.
All right, we're going to take a break. If you want to call in, there's the number 615-737-PLUS, 615-737-7587. And then when we come back, obviously these two men are out now. I want to ask you all, what prospect do you have that they will make a positive contribution, going forward? What do you hope and expect? We'll take a break. Be back right after this.